Hello everyone, welcome to the ITLS Academy. Today we are going to discuss the topic that is your sources of the contamination. Okay, so this why we are discuss this topic because we have to maintain a clean work environment. We have to maintain a clean work environment. Okay, so when we have to maintain a clean work environment, what we have to do? We have to do a cleaning and we have to do a sanitization. Okay, cleaning is done for removing the dust, dirt, or a food debris, and this sanitization is done to remove, kill, or eliminate the microorganism. Okay, but when we have to do this cleaning and sanitization, before it, we have to know that what is the different sources of the contamination. Okay, because we have to control the contamination. Okay, contamination means that which is not suppose that some ingredients, some product which are not the part of the particular food product, but it will somehow enter into that ingredient that spoil the food product. Or here we are talking about the milk and milk product, so it will spoil the milk and milk product. Okay, milk and milk products. So before doing all these things, what we have to do, we have to control that contamination. And for controlling the controlling that contamination, we have to know that what is the sources of the contamination. Okay, so before starting the lecture, I'm going to tell you the exact definition of the contamination. So here we are talking about the milk and milk product. So I'm going to tell you the definition in the terms of milk and milk product. So contamination is simply defined as a substances like any chemicals, dirt, any chemicals, dirt, pathogens, or radiation, which are either intentionally or unintentionally, either intentionally or unintentionally added into the food, added into the milk or milk product, which leads to a health effect. That is called a contamination. Okay, so when something is contaminated, then obviously there is a sources of that contamination. So in today's lecture, we are focused on that sources which contaminate the milk and milk product. So let's start today's lecture. While all plant used for the production of the pasteurized liquid milk means that the milk product which are free from pathogenic microorganism. Pathogenic microorganism. They are basically similar, and the layout of the factory may be surprisingly idiosyncratic. There are, of course, general guidelines for maintaining a clean environment. Okay, so when we have to maintain a clean environment, then obviously there is a guidelines for it that apply to all dairy operation. Okay, so these guidelines which are we are going to discuss is what they are apply to all the dairy operation, but even so there may be a numerous solution to the same problem. Okay, for example, ideal detergent for one type of the food residue may be quite inappropriate for another. Suppose that we are using a detergent for removing the bakery dust. Okay, but now this is very appropriate for removing the bakery dust, but this A detergent is very unappropriate for removing the milk dust or milk debris. Similarly, one sterilant formulation may be highly effective against a gram-positive bacteria but leave a population of a gram-negative bacteria largely unscathed. So same in case of the sanitization process. Suppose that the sanitizer that we are using, maybe it is very effective in case of the gram-positive bacteria, but it will um, it will mm, get no effect on the gram negative bacteria and it will remain same as it is. Okay, now the next is your, it is visually important, therefore that factory manager seek a expert advice. That's why the factory manager take a expert advice with respect to the hygienic design. Okay, this hygienic design is very important because it will leads to a clean environment and protect the, sorry, just a minute, and protect the contamination. Okay, and operation of any given process line, and in addition are fully or aware of the microbial hazard that may be associated with every facet of the manufacturing facility. Okay, now the next is your sources of the contamination, which is very important topic. Just occasionally, food ingredient can be contaminated at the source. Okay, so sometimes the food ingredients is become the sources of the contamination. Suppose that if you leave a milk like not in a proper milk, some debris of the milk inside the udder, then it will lead to the growth of the Campylobacter species. Okay, now this will become the source for the growth of the Campylobacter species, or even a Salmonella enteritis in case of the egg. If egg are leave inside the product line, then it will lead to the growth of the Salmonella enteritis. Are cases in point. Alternative raw material can attract an undesirable microflora. Okay, so these are the raw material which may attract an undesirable microflora during the collection or even during the storage, and the presence of spores of the bacillus species. In case of the milk powder, they are usually the result of the contamination prior to a processing. Consequently, an end user should always purchase ingredients which are against an agreed species which is relevant to the application. The same restriction should be extended in case of the packaging material as well, because there is a little point in maintaining a positive pressure of sterile air over filling line. Okay, so same case will be lead in case of the packaging material, means that when we pack a product, so we have to maintain a sterilized air or sterilized air during a filling line. Okay, if this is not maintained, then this will come leads to the contamination, and when a food packaging material are contaminated, then it will leads to the contamination will occur inside the food product also. So sources of the contamination may be the raw material, maybe the food ingredients, and sometimes even a packaging material will also become a reason for the contamination of the milk and milk product. Now the next is your, however, while manufacturer needs to be aware of this essential requirement, it is likely that most of the incident of the product contamination are arises within the premises of the manufacturer and from one more of the following sources. Okay, so sometimes the contamination incident which occur inside the product are arises within the premises of the manufacturer. Okay, so maybe one of the reason that written below become a reason for that contamination. Okay, so first one is your the environment. Okay, environment means that the environment at which the manufacturing are performed. Suppose that the pipelines are not clear, the floors are not clear, the anything it which is not clean, it will leads to the contamination. Sometimes the plant and the equipments are improperly clean. Okay, so it will also leads to the contamination. Food handlers. Okay, food handlers means that which handle the food. Okay, suppose that some food handlers have a cut in their hand. Okay, and this cut is not properly covered by a bandage. Okay, then it will also leads to the contamination to the product. Okay, maybe the food handlers are suffering from some disease. Okay, and in that case the food handlers are working inside the premises, then maybe these will contaminate the food product. Maybe they have a cough, maybe they have a some asthmatic problem, then maybe they will also contribute in the contamination of the food. Spoil or a waste product. Suppose that this is your spoil product and this is your um good product. Now these products are kept together, or maybe when our waste product are removing from the premises, then some debris from that product transfer into the ingredients which are good in condition, then in that case it will also leads to the contamination. Effective control over each of these packets of the food related operation will be essential so that it will ensure the microbiological or a chemical integrity of the product which is not compromised. Okay, so microbiological or the chemical integrity of the product is not be compromised, because when it is compromised, then ultimately it will lead to a um, contamination, and when the contamination occur, then it will ultimately affect the health of the human being. Now the first one that we are going to discuss is about the environment sources. On many occasions, a new development may have to be located in an existing factory, but if the choice is greenfield site, it is worth surviving the site in advance for a potential microbiological hazard. If the prevailing wind passes over a rubbish dump prior to reaching the factory, then airborne pollution will be a major hazard. Okay, so suppose that the first case is what? When a new development, suppose that a factory which is developed at that area is already a some contaminated area. Okay, then it will automatically leads to a microbiological hazard. Okay, suppose that wind is passes over a rubbish dump. That means that a dump which contain a spoiled food product. Okay, then after that this air which passes through a rubbish dump reaches to the factory, then it will leads to a airborne pollution which is considered a major hazard. While the location of the facility on a food plane could lead to an equal serious problem of a different kind. Access by an unpaved road should be avoided, as well as because the accumulation of the water in winter or swirling dust in summer can make a attainment of the hygienic working condition, which give are extremely difficult. So the annual temperature and the rainfall profile are also worth noting, because They will figure or are unlikely, so that it will determine the location of the factory and the hygienic design of the interior, that take into account which predict the range of our relative humidities and the temperatures. Now, the first environmental source is airborne problem. Suppose that I already discussed in a previous slide, that suppose that this is your rubbish dump and this is your factory which is near to that rubbish dump. Now, air passes from that rubbish drum reaches to the factory, and it will leads to what? Airborne contamination. So, air entering any building will contain a non-viable dust along with a endospore of bacillus species. Okay, suppose that air which are entering inside the building, it contain a non-viable dust, and along with that non-viable dust, it also contain a endospore of the bacillus species, various species of non-spore forming bacteria, yeast, and also a range of a mold spore. Okay, so the balance between the different group, which will depend upon the location of the factory, the time of the year, and the climatic condition. Okay, so this balance between the different group will totally depend upon the location of the factory, time of that year, and the climatic condition. For example, tend to dominate the air flora in a spring following their release from a opening leaf or a flower bud, while mold spore which reaches to a highest level after the shower of the rain. Okay, if there is a raining season, that in that case there is a increase in a mold spores, because it become rich in a high and reaches to the highest level when a shower of a rain occurred, and the end result is that bacterial count in our air circulating within a factory may range from 5.8 into 10 colony forming unit, and even sometime more than 4.0 multiplied by 10 CFU per unit. But in case of yeast and mold, the range is around 2.0 into 10.0 into 10, 10. The main sources of this microflora are air movement into the plant, open drain in the floor, and the passage of the personnel. Now, the next is little can be done about the movement of the air into a factory, because apart from the natural opening of the door for the ingredients, product, or a personal movement, ventilation is essential so that it will remove the heat and the moisture released during the processing. Okay, so there is a little can be done about the movement of air into a factory. Okay, suppose that this is your factory, then there is a little movement of the air inside the factory will be done, because apart from a natural opening of the door for the ingredient, product, or a personal movement, there is a ventilation is very important, so that the heat which are generated inside the factory, or even the moisture released during the processing, should be removed. However, with the air filtration, the risk of the airborne contamination decline. Okay, if there is a air filtration are installed inside the factory, then it will decreases the risk of the airborne contamination dramatically, and ducting of incoming air through a primary filter, so that it will remove a gross contamination, which are followed by a capable of removing around 90 to 99% of a particle above 1 pm size, is very essential for the areas which contain open wards of a food. In a selected parts of a factory, the use of the filter capable of removing around 99.9% of all the particle in 0.1 to 0.2 YM range, or around 99.9% of the unit down to 0. 01 p.m. may be essential so that it will achieve a desirable shelf life. However, the location of that air tray, air intake and outlet, the method of the frequency of the cleaning filter holders and the routine for replacing that filter are very expect that the merit inclusion within the hazard analysis critical control point plan. Now the next is your water supply. Okay, after air contamination, the next is your water supply, because it has also become the major reason for the contamination of the milk and milk product. If the water is already contaminated and when this water are used for the cleaning purpose, then it will again leads to a contamination, and sometimes this water are mixed to the ingredients for the production of the ingredient, or for the sorry for the processing of the ingredient. Then if the water are already contaminated, then ultimately it will contaminate the product. Water is required inside in the dairy industry for the incorporation into a product. For example, for the recombination of the product, okay, that I already told you, in some ingredient we uses a water for their processing. Okay, so when we have to recombination of the powder will be done, then in that case what we have to do, we use a water for a process operation like heating and cooling and cleaning of the plant, equipment, fabric of the factory. So inside the dairy industry, there is a lots of use of the water. That's why the water supply should be free from any type of the contamination. If it contain higher level of the chemical, higher level of the microbial growth, then ultimately it will lead to the contamination in the product. Consequently, the overall water requirement of a dairy plant are large, and while not all the supply will need to be a potable quality or better, water conservation and the management have become a major issues. Obviously, the volume of the water required for a direct incorporation or processing application will vary from product to product. Okay, obviously amount of the water, and maybe it is direct incorporation and the process application, it is related to a product to product. But it is of note that the factory in different countries have a different demand even when the manufacturing the same product. According to a Hindic 1995, the water to a milk ratio for liquid milk or a dessert processing range between 0.5 to 6.71 kg of milk in Belgium, Germany, Hungary, Ireland, and United Kingdom. The demand, even the demand of the water is different in different countries. Even their industries are producing the same product. Now, the next is your, in some industrialization countries, domestic water supply are safe to drink and only occasion do bloom of toxic algae or even the development of the protozoa in a reservoir can cause a problem. Okay, if we talk about the some industrialized countries, then in that case the domestic water supply are safe to the drink, and there is a occasionally contamination of the bloom of that toxic algae, and there is a development of the protozoa in reservoir which create a problem. One of the reason for this general level of the confidence is that pathogens like E. coli, Listeria monocytogenes, Salmonella species cannot grow in water, and in any event such organisms are sensitive to the level of the chlorine found in a drinking water. Okay, we all know that the chlorine are present in a drinking water, then that's why it will very sensitive for the E. coli, Listeria monocytogene, and the subspecies of the Salmonella. Nevertheless, inability to grow in water does not imply an inability to survive. Hence, it is important that water used for rinsing item of the equipment or a curd or a flavoring component of the cottage cheese, for example, cues or a cucumber, then it should be of higher quality. That means a water. Additionally, any wax of water which is used for a washing purpose should be changed frequently. Now, the next is your animal vector. Infestation imply the presence of the storage pest and sometime other than a microorganism, which leads to a problem which is associated with the rodents, birds, or a insect. So, an outline of their potential activities, which we'll discuss in the table next, but some specific features of each group are worthy of mention. Okay, so these are the table which give a detailed specification of the drinking and processed water. Here it is your parameter like your physiochemical properties included pH, conductivity, chloride, sulfate, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, aluminum, and undesirable substances like nitrate, nitrite, ammonium, nitrogen, oxygen, mineral oil, iron, manganese, copper, zinc, phosphorus, toxic substances like arsenic, cadmium, cyanide, chromium, mercury, nickel, leads, antimony, selenium, pesticide, packs, microorganism like total viable count, coliform, fecal streptococci, sulfide reducing Clostridium species. And here, according to the European Union and according to the WHO, MAT and GL, what is the uh, minimum value of all these for in case of the drinking and process water. Now the next is your some example of the problem which are associated with the animal vector. Okay, so the first column is for the group of that animal and the second is result of the attack. Okay, if there is a rodents, then there is a loss by a consumption and partial eating of the product, contamination with the dropping, hair, health hazard from the bacteria, indirect losses from damaged container, possible blockage of pipe work, and considerable contamination if carcass accidentally macerated during the product handling. Next is your birds, and the result of attack, its consumption and contamination by dropping feathers, insect limited losses but high risk of bacterial contamination. Now the next is your rodents. So in animal case, the first contamination which occur by a rodents. In some location, squirrel can be a problem, but the contamination of the food stuff is more usually linked with the activity of the rats and mice principally. The Norway rat and the roof rat and the house bosses. Okay, so there in some location, squirrel become the problem for the food industry, but the contamination inside the food stuff are occur by the activity of the rat and the mice principally. Okay, so the rat which involved in the contamination of the food stuff are Norway rat, the roof rat, and the house mouse. These three animals enjoy a worldwide distribution, and their omnivorous diet render most food store attractive target. Any unguarded gap in masonry, which including the drainage or a woodwork which can provide access, and while the roof rat enjoy the best reputation for climbing, the agility of the most rodent make a entry at roof level a feasible proposition. While the food consumption per animal at any point in time location is not high, large volume of the food can become contaminated with the saliva, hair, urine, or a feces. As all such contaminated food has to be discarded, the prevention of the infestation is very essential, and this approach will involve the following thing. The first one is your careful observation of possibly entering point. Rats in a particular are creature of habit, and they soon leave black grease mark on favored runway. In addition, rodents urine and hair fluorescence bright in UVA, so that the occasional inspection with black lamp with the help of the confirm that rats have not found in a entry point. Rodents also proofing of vulnerable point, which is depending upon the location sheet or a wire mesh. The next is your birds. Birds are what? They are potentially serious nosiness because their dropping may contain a salmonella or a other pathogen. Okay, so the dropping of the, there is a problem with the dropping of the birds. Okay, maybe it contain what? Salmonella, which is very dangerous for the health of the human being, and sometimes it also contain a other pathogenic microorganism which leads to a um, foodborne disease. However, it is usually easy to deny access to any bird that stray into a vicinity, and even a potential to purchases on the outside of the building which are coated with a material or deter habitual use. Next is your insect. Insect must be deterred from entering a food premises at all time, because some will feed on animal feces and human food alike, and the potential for disease transfer is self-evident. Okay, so entry of the insect inside the food premises should be prohibited at all time, because these insects are feed on a animal feces, and sometimes the wastage of the um, sometimes the wastage of the human food. The use of aerosol insecticide on a dairy premises tend to be viewed with some concern, partially because of the potential toxicity to a human if foodstuff become a contaminated, and partially because a dying insect could easily drop into an open vat of milk without being noticed, except perhaps by eventual consumer. For this reason, it is better to employ fine gauze screen over a store room windows, along with our electrified grids backed by our ultraviolet fluorescence tube in food processing areas. The latter are excellent for trapping all flying insect. The control of the cockroaches, on the other hand, does not require the skill application of the insecticide. Thus, while in most of the cases cockroaches do not pose a serious health risk, they have been reported to carry a pathogenic bacteria, hence the population number must be kept under a strict control. So this is all about the sources of the contamination inside the industry of milk and milk product. I hope you will understand, but if you have any query related to this topic, you can ask me in a comment box, or for a further detail, you can follow the ITLS Academy on different platforms, that is Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and subscribe our channel ITLS Academy on YouTube and get our app from a Google Play. Or you can also ask your query to the helpline number that are already mentioned in your slide, that is 7080833450, and visit our website www.itlsacademy.com. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe our channel.